Welcome back. Take a look at Bitcoin hitting a record high after President-elect Trump suggested plans to create a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Mike Lee is here to weigh in. He's Mike Lee Strategy founder. It's always great to see you. I want to get your take on it. Some people saying 200,000, some people saying 250,000. At 107,000, it's kind of scary, Mike.
Yeah. Well, look, I think without all the catalysts from Trump, Bitcoin was going to 200,000, and that has to do with the halving cycle and the history of the asset and tripling the previous cycle high. And now when you add on the fact that we've got a guy like David Sachs who's going to be your crypto czar in the White House, and President Trump talking about setting up a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Well, if the U.S. is going to do it, all sorts of other entities are going to do it across the world, and this is going to create all sorts of new buyers. To me, the easy way to play this, and one of the catalysts that brought us up to 107,000 or the ease of buying it in an ETF. The ETF I like the best is HODL. It's run by Van Eck, and it's an acronym for Hold On for Dear Life. Just if you go back to the Wall Street Bets days, but I'm a huge Bitcoin fan. It's not going anywhere.
Okay, so David Sachs, part of his portfolio is crypto. The other part of his portfolio is AI. I know you see AI as continuing to be a big driver in this market, but you're kind of moving from the hardware plays to the software plays. Tell us about what you're buying in the software play space.
Yeah, so the history of technology stocks is that, you have the hardware and the infrastructure. First, those names run. Think of your NVIDIAs of the world. Okay, and now you move on to the software names. And one that I've been talking about with that's done very well is Palantir. I think now that, that floodgates open for all of the software, I think that's what's going to be the story in 2025. So ServiceNow does some things similar to Palantir, where they act as like an air traffic controller for the large language models. The large language models are these big, complicated computer algorithms that put together all the data and spit it out. Well, these large language models without software are essentially science experiments. I don't know if I call them useless, but they're very hard to use without a software driving that ship. So that's where ServiceNow comes in. These cybersecurity names, Palo Alto, CrowdStrike, they're going to do extraordinarily well because the things you can do with AI and cybersecurity are remarkable. So I think that's going to be the trade for next year. It's not that these other names, the hardware names, won't do well. I just think these will be the leaders.
Mike, we are 2 days out from the final Fed meeting of 2024, and we're widely expecting to get another rate cut, 25 basis points. But we have to also acknowledge that inflation we have seen seems to be ticking up recently. There's still pressure there. Should we be questioning whether another rate cut right now is appropriate?
Well, you have to ask yourself, what are the other drivers of inflation? Excess government spending, the war on energy started by the current administration, where there's going to be massive change, massive regulatory change on the horizon, things that will really put downward pressure on inflation across the spectrum, and also the way that the CPI is calculated for shelter. It's not really reflective of what's going on in the lags in the number. And you got to ask yourself, how restrictive do you want the Fed to be? Because right now we're anywhere between 100 and 200 basis points over where inflation is, even if you're being aggressive with your inflation numbers. So does the Fed really need to be that restrictive at the moment, especially if it looks like we're getting close to 2%. So look, I think we're going to get this 25 basis points. I think this also has a lot to do with what's going on in the banking sector and the gap between the 10-year Treasury and the 30-year mortgage. There's still a lot of stress out there that's just stuck around since Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. And so there's some issues in the plumbing that I think we need rate cuts for as well, but I don't know that we're going to get another 150 basis points next year. I don't know how much we're going to get next year, and I think that's the story this week as to what the guidance looks like.
All right, let's focus on the rest of this year, Michael. I think that's what the markets are doing today. Always great to see you, and of course, we will see you next year.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.